and still are, but you were created to be. As guardians of this planet, as guardians of this galaxy, and as major players in a very, very big game. Bigger than you realise now, and I hope as big as you will come to realise before the weekend over. Anyway, that's my start. Here's the best stuff.
Thank you. Thank you, Azartanya, very much for your flattery. I would like to, again, welcome all of you here, and thank you for coming to this workshop. This is an introductory workshop on Kathara healing. It's Kathara healing level 1 and an introduction to Kathara healing level 2, which has recently been put into the program. I say introductory, and it's kind of funny. For anybody, anyone here who has looked through the manual for the Kathara manual, you will see that an introduction in our world is rather detailed. There's a lot of information that we're going to cover. Before we get into technicals, I would like to first of all thank Monica and everyone that has participated in bringing us up here. It is an honor for us to come up here and share this information with you. It wasn't an idea that we actually had time for this year because our schedule is very crazy, going all over internationally and teaching and doing planetary grid work. But a situation came up where one of the people who was teaching Kathara couldn't come here, and somebody had to come and bring the material to you because there were already people registered to come. So we were brought up here by Monica and the people who were working with her. And I would like to thank Monica and Cicely and Alexis and whoever else has helped to bring us here, because it is an honor. I've always wanted to come to Canada to bring the teachings because since I was a child, I visited once in the Ontario region, and I always liked it here. I just felt the energy. I resonated with it in a way I couldn't understand. So this was a place that I always wanted to be able to come to bring these teachings. And now we're here. So I'd just like to thank everybody, and I hope everybody can appreciate the effort of those people who organized this, because they did most of the work of putting it together, just like we've done most of the work of putting the program together. Now, the program that we're going to spend the next, this evening and 2 days exploring is called Kathara. Excuse me. The Kathara Biospiritual Healing System. Now, this is a healing program that is built on what is called divine blueprint science. This is an ancient science that is more advanced in its way than what is called science in our world today. Yet it is completely translatable into what we call science today. What is most important about the biospiritual healing system that's called Kathara is that it gives us an opportunity to begin to understand the reality of what we are made of. Most of us have some idea that we have a physical body, obviously. We have a mental body of some sort, a mind that is aware of having a physical body. And most of us hope, at least, that we have a spiritual body, whatever that might be, because that's our connection to something larger than here, bigger than here, that gives us purpose and reason. Some people call it God, some people call it spirit, some people don't call it anything, but they sense that living life force that they're a part of, whether or not they have a body. Now, not everybody realizes that the body is just a very tiny part of the anatomy of the human being. It's only a very tiny part of the anatomy of matter. We're in a system that we have our bodies here, but we're also in a world that appears to be three-dimensionally solid. It appears to be made of particles, and our scientists tell us about quarks and all sorts of little subatomic particles, protons, electrons, all those things. So there's obviously a thing called matter that's out here. But behind this thing called matter, both the matter that our bodies are made of and the matter that the planet is made of, there is much more of an anatomy of energy structure. There's a structure called the Kathara grid. There is the structure of many layers of the Kathara grid that bring us up to the point where what is not manifest becomes manifest as matter. The power of the human being, the power of the human being as a spiritual creation, exists in those realms of anatomy that are beyond what we see in the three-dimensional form. Those are the areas of our anatomy that literally direct what our physical bodies will do. They direct our birth process, our aging process, our growth process. They direct whether we will be healthy or sick. If we don't understand the anatomy that exists behind our matter, we are going to be at the mercy of that matter. If our body gets old, we're not going to know what to do to change that, to stop it, or to fix it. If our body gets sick, we're going to try to fix it from the outside in. But if there's something wrong in the templates beneath the matter, we're not going to be able to create a permanent fix or a permanent healing. Kathara healing takes us into the core template of matter. It takes us not only into the levels of healing or holistic healing that are identified in things like Chinese acupuncture, which deal with meridian lines in the body, with Reiki systems of healing, which deal with the subtle energy bodies and chakras and using symbol codes to work with them. Beneath all of those levels of your body anatomy, your subtle body anatomy, there is a core structure that governs what your chakras are going to do, what your meridian lines are going to do, and what your matter particles are going to do. What's fascinating about learning your anatomy, it's like we've been going through thousands of years thinking that we only had, let's say, one hand and one leg. And we've been trying to get along with that one hand and one leg, not realizing there was a whole other half of our body that if we learned how to use it, we would be able to walk and function much better. The other half of our body, their anatomy, that we have not been using in the last 25,000 years especially, has been the part called the Kathara grid. The subtle energy systems that get into the primal life force currents and how they come through the body template to manifest what we call our physical form. But they don't only manifest the physical form. And this is why we call Kathara a bio, referring to biology, spiritual healing system. Spirit, consciousness. The consciousness that makes you aware of who you are today, that helps you to remember who you were yesterday, who you were as a child, the part of you that allows you to visualize who you might like to become or where you might like to go in the future. This part of you that you call consciousness is your spirit. It's right here with you. It's not separate from you. The Kathara grid template that your body matter manifests on is also the template of energy that your consciousness manifests into dimensionality through. It's what gets you into your body. If there are template problems within the human body, which right now there are on a global scale, and there have been for 25,000 years, if there are problems in the template, there will not only be problems with the matter form, there will be problems with the consciousness as it tries to get into that matter form. Right now, the way things work in our system is when we are in spirit form, before we enter a process called fetal integration, where we as spirit, consciousness, come into a body vehicle to have an incarnation here, we have a problem with the body pattern here because of template distortions, which means as soon as the consciousness comes into the body and intertwines itself with the DNA template, with the gene code, the DNA template literally shuts off about 90% of the consciousness. The part that's left here grows. This is what becomes the person. You remember you as a baby being. It becomes the person that you grow to be here. But the rest of who you are, who you were when you came in, is who you still are, but you don't remember it because you can't bring the memory of yourself as a spirit directly in, because the body serves as a light switch. It's turning most of the current off, most of the current of your consciousness. Now, the current of your consciousness, if you had it fully embodied as a human being with a human template, you would have a minimum of 12 dimensions of consciousness, not just seeing a three-dimensional reality field, but you would be able to access and move your consciousness and your body through 12 dimensions of matter, which means different matter density levels. We were, once upon a time, a species that was immortal. Our bodies did not die. Death is not a natural condition for the human body form. However, we've been dying for a very long time on this planet. There's a reason why we've been dying on this planet, and that reason is a genetic mutation. It's a genetic mutation that has been rendered on the deepest core template level of the subtle bodies, the Kathara grid. And because of that, literally, the way our chromosome structures evolve, the way our gene code in chemical terms evolves, is not what it was intended to be. It is not functioning on its original divine blueprint. So we find ourselves trapped as consciousness in a mortal body form that has a very, very short lifespan that progressively deteriorates before our eyes. By the time we hit 35 years old, we start to feel it. we start to feel what's called the death hormone. It starts to kick in, and it starts to make you tired when 10 years ago the same thing didn't make you tired. The body literally starts to kill itself. It poisons itself with chemical toxins. Science here calls this normal. They call it the aging process. They tell us that we're supposed to accept the fact that birth, death, and paying taxes are about the only thing that's really certain in existence. Science here accepts death as what it's supposed to be like for a human form, because science here is based on a very small amount of partial knowledge, because the ancient knowledge was hidden from the races on this planet. It was hidden in order to make us easy to control, in order to keep us from remembering the rest of ourselves why we were here. Now, when we get into the Templar workshop, which will be next weekend, we'll get into the reasons, who did this, who done it, and why have we been, as a race, suffering for 25,000 years? Why, if we were immortal, why the heck have we been dying all these years? Why don't we remember who we are if we're somebody special? If we're something different than what we perceive as animals, and we actually have this huge amount of consciousness called spirit that has the answers to everything, is directly connected to God, why don't we know this? Why does it seem like something we wish for? Hope is there, but we have no evidence to really support. There are reasons why these things took place, and the reasons are huge. We're in the middle of a big, big drama right now on this planet. It's not a drama that started yesterday. It's a drama that started in a period of time that's known as the Atlantean period. Now, we hear legends of Atlantis coming up in our culture these days, and it's still a fictional place in terms of mainstream experts telling us what our past was. Mainstream experts base their interpretation of what they think our past was on records and bones that they found and guesses they've made as to what those might mean if you put them together in certain ways. Right now, our cultures are being fed through mainstream science. They're being fed partial facts and guesses as if they were absolute truth, as if they were proven, when in fact, the assumptions that science frequently comes up with by looking at evidence, but not having any idea of what to compare it to, we're being taught assumptions as core truths, and we're learning to accept that. We're learning to accept we came out of animals, probably apes, Darwinian theory, but now there's a little argument in the scientific community. No, maybe it wasn't out of apes, but rather something that swam in the waters once upon a time, and then we grew limbs and hands and things. Our flippers became limbs, and we walked up on land and became air breathers. And the real one, the Big Bang Theory, if you look at it, takes us right back to we started as pond scum. And somehow we managed to manifest ourselves in the water, then up on land, and here we are, the next generation of, must have been the progression through from pond scum to fish thing to ape thing into what we call human. If you look at the amount of stretch it takes in concepts to come up with that idea as your core truth, you get some idea of what science is doing right now. There are reasons why science is doing what it's doing. Those reasons won't be identified in this particular course too much. It'll be in the next course, because that gets into something called Illuminati, which are a body of people on this planet that have been doing things with information for many thousands of years in order to control the large amounts of people in a negative way. We'll talk about Illuminati when we get into the Templar workshop, and we'll talk about a whole lot more. But in this workshop, we're going to talk about what's most important to you as a person first, before we deal with the big picture drama that we're all in the middle of right now. Because believe me, you'll want to know all this stuff before you find out what we're in the middle of right now, so it doesn't scare you to death. See, there's no reason to be afraid of the big picture drama if you already know the solutions. All right? So here, we're going to give you the solutions first. The solutions have to do with understanding what your body is, what your mind is, what your consciousness is, where your spirit's located, and how to get it the heck back into your body so you can start having a better life experience here. Kathara healing is the beginning process of learning how to do that, because we will learn literally the anatomy, the structure of our anatomy on 15 dimensions. Now, 15 dimensions. It's funny if you look at science again, they have all sorts of theories. There's a unified field theory. There's quantum theory. Theory implies guess, because we don't know. All right? Now, this information that is being presented here, you will be shown the structure of 15-dimensional physics. You will be shown the structures that exist within those structures that allow us to create what's called the hologram of matter. This is not a theory. Now, scientists would love to argue with me, I'm sure. Well, how do you know it's not a theory? Everything is a theory. No, it isn't. Fortunately, there are levels of reality. There are beings in levels of reality that have not been involved with the distortions of consciousness and biology that have taken place on this planet, who have held the records, who have held the original creation records that literally detail the spiritualized science by which creation itself is brought into manifestation by a common source intelligence that many people choose to call God. It's not a God that sits on a big throne and has a white beard and stuff. It's a consciousness. We were created in the image of God. That doesn't mean we're all men. That was a man twist. Humans created that one. We were created in the image of God as consciousness, as spirit, as awareized energy. Now, we're going to learn about the structure of how we as awareized energy got ourselves into this predicament of being stuck in a mortal body. We're going to learn 15-dimensional structure, and I will teach this to you as an absolute, not as a theory. Now, you have the absolute free will choice to take anything I say and consider it a theory, a guess, or a belief, as opposed to something that is known. But in my life and in my world, these things are known. So I teach with a lot of conviction, because I'm not teaching you guesses. I'm teaching you what I've known and found to be true. Part of the reason that even though I was painfully shy all through my growing up stage, and I literally dropped out of college because I had a public speaking class as a requirement, and I got an A on my written speech, and it was my turn to go up and read it. And I couldn't deal with it because I was terrified of talking to people this way. I was used to telepathy, but not speaking. Now, what could possibly get somebody who's that painfully shy up doing what I'm doing, talking about absolutely radical theories of science and spirit in front of all sorts of audiences all over the world? You can't fake that one. It takes a lot of conviction. It takes a knowing and a desire to share a truth that has created a freedom in my life. A freedom that because I know these things, because I've been taught these things, and I have used the technologies, I have found levels of my own consciousness, got them back into body. I have learned to do things with my consciousness, and we're beginning to learn how to do them with our bodies, that are science fiction compared to what science tells you is possible. I know that these are the freedom teachings, and if I can at least get some of that across to each one of you, and each one of you will get a little piece that's all your own. It'll mean something different to every one of you, because every one of you came here for a different reason. There's a need that brought every one of you here, a core need that you might not even know on a conscious level, but there was some piece of information that you were looking for that would be your next step to grab hold of so you could start to make a difference and start to find your power again. Because what's happened on this planet to everybody is that we have lost our power. Right now, we walk around in a world that appears to inflict itself on us from the moment we take our first breath. We appear to be in a world that happens to us, not a world that we create. We appear to have all sorts of things coming at us constantly. That is a very real appearance when you're stuck here. But when we start to realize the framework of reality that is creating this, when we start to realize this is a hologram field. What's that? It's a thought form field. That means, theoretically, my thoughts should be able to influence it, right? Theoretically. Well, they do. If your DNA imprint was working the way it was designed to work by its divine blueprint, by the original blueprint that Source created humans to be, you would be able to literally manifest everything directly into matter with no problem at all. There are a lot of ascension teachings out there these days in the New Age movement. They will teach you it's all mind over matter. Just believe this or believe that, and poof, so it will be. Well, it's like there's a lot of poos happening out there, but people are still sitting in their chairs. Nobody's demanifested yet. Nobody's been able to manifest a house like that right before them when they only have 2 pennies in their pocket. There's a lot of promises being made in the New Age movement with what we call partial and or false ascension teachings that are teaching you part of the mechanics of the way the mind is indeed supposed to be able to, as a spirit, create what it desires in matter. But what is not being taught is what is stopping that process from working functionally and effectively, where each one of us could not worry about life because we'd be able to manifest what we desire. We can use positive thinking. We can use affirmations. I am this now. I am whole now. I am demanifesting now. I'm still here. That is the beginning, learning to use the mental body more effectively. But if it were that simple, you would demanifest now once you gave the command. The reason the commands don't jump into immediate action in our 3D world is because there's a distortion taking place between our mind thought patterns and we as spirit desiring to do something, and the chemical realities in the body and the energy realities behind them. There are distortions taking place in the templates that are taking what our intention is and doing things to it, and it comes out to be something different in the hologram. Since 25,500 BC, there's been something wrong with the planetary grids in the way they're running frequency. There's been a problem in the electromagnetic fields on the planet, and that has created severe mutation in the DNA of all life forms on the planet. There was a time when life on Earth had what was called a variable base genetic code. That means the genetic alphabet, which are the chemical components of the DNA chains, were made out of a different amount of chemicals. A frog would have one amount of chemical combinations, a human would have another amount, a tree would have another amount. Right now, science was amazed to find, when they started to get into DNA, that everything appears to have what's called a base 4 genetic alphabet. That literally 4 chemicals that combined into different combinations are what make up the gene code of all things. So they assume that that's the way it is. They assume that's normal. That is not normal. This whole planet right now is under a base 4 genetic mutation called the checkerboard DNA mutation that is being caused because of a distortion in the electromagnetic fields on the planet. Now, when we get into Kathara in the next 2 days, we're going to learn how an electromagnetic field distortion on the planet could actually affect the DNA of life forms, how that could actually happen. Because we're going to learn about something called the Planetary Biofeed Interface System, which is the system by which primal life force currents come through from source through the universal matrix into the galactic matrix, into the planetary matrix, and into the bodies of everything on the planet. This is how we have our consciousness connection to primal energy, which is the primal consciousness and intelligence of source. These energies are supposed to flow in a very specific way. We get energy fed to us from the planet. This is how our spirit downloads into our body. It goes through the planetary grids and back into our fields. Because the planetary grids have been damaged, our Mother Earth Terra Gaia here, our planet, is ill. It has been ill since 25,500 BC, actually before that, but the real illness set in then. There has been this mutation that has existed in the gene code that has blocked out most of the DNA. It's done that by blocking out most of the DNA template. So we're going to learn about what a DNA template is as opposed to the chemical DNA. We're going to learn about the body systems, the interwoven subtle energy systems, like chakras and meridians and axiotonal lines and things called Huva bodies and Kathara grids and crystal seals that are all part of the regulatory system of the DNA template, all of which work together to create what manifests as the chemical DNA chains. The reason we are stuck here is because most of our DNA has been turned off. What science looks at now and calls junk DNA, which are sequences of DNA that appear to not produce proteins. They appear to be dormant and don't do anything. They just sit there in the DNA chains. They didn't always sit there. Once upon a time, they were filled with things that created chemicals, created proteins, created building blocks for life. As we work with Kathara, we will be able to trace where the distortions are, and we don't need a laboratory to begin the process of reverse mutation. Reverse mutation of the genome, the human genome, which means bringing it back to its original base 12 potential. Base 12 means there were 12 chemical components that made up the DNA chains on a physical level. It meant there were 12 strand templates on the subtle body levels that when it works right, they come into manifestation, manifest the chemicals, and with those chemicals, we are able to hold 12 dimensions of consciousness, which is the consciousness of what is known as an avatar. We were all born to be avatars. We were born to be, some of us, ascended masters. We'll talk a little bit in this course about indigo children. That's a buzzword in the New Age movement now. Indigo children, they're special, they're something. What are they? We'll talk a little bit about that because they're a human form, but they have a DNA template that goes beyond 12 strands. They have from 24 to 48 strand potential because they came here as part of a rescue mission. They're a species, a Lyran-Syrian species of human consciousness that came to help reset the templates of the DNA here on this planet. Most people that are drawn to this work are indigo children, but they don't know it. Indigos don't know they're indigos till they wake up. Humans don't know they're supposed to be angelic until they wake up. So we're all stuck down here wondering, what do I do with myself next? If you look at life in the three-dimensional term, and you look at the options our societies give us, it can be really, really depressing. Because you get to the point where, okay, you work all this time, you work really, really, really hard, so you can make what? Money. So why? So you can have a roof over your head and maybe a nice life. And by the time you make enough money to get that roof over your head and have a nice life, most of the time you've run so much energy through your body and exhausted yourself so much that your body falls apart. So you get to sit in a nice house and call the doctor. And then what you want more than anything, and you're even willing to give up your nice house to have it, is your health back. It's almost like if God made it this way on purpose, he had a very strange sense of humor. Slightly masochistic, slightly sadistic. God is not a sadist. What we are living here was not the intended divine blueprint of this planetary system. What is happening here has hung us up in an evolutionary time warp where we're actually de-evolving instead of moving forward in our evolution back into the full avatar expression that we were created to be. It's not just us that's being affected, not just humans are being affected by this particular genetic mutation. Every life form on this planet, because every life form is connected to the planetary grids, is suffering right now. Animals are trapped in a very unnatural relationship where they have to energy vampire off each other, which means they have to kill each other in order to simply sustain. That's where you get your food chain. That's not natural either. It is natural on planets that are not able to run the higher frequency currents or the primal life force currents. If this planet were running the full spectrum of 15-dimensional currents, and particularly the first 12 of those 15, it would be very different here. Lions and lambs would lay down with each other. Humans would not kill each other. It would be the type of reality that our holy books have promised us exists, a reality that is very heavenly indeed. The beginning of returning the potentials of having a heaven on earth starts with each person, because human beings were created as an angelic species that was appointed as the guardians of this planet. We were supposed to help the other life forms on this planet to evolve into their full expression of their divine blueprints. We were supposed to be loving keepers of the planetary Templar complex, which is something we'll talk about next weekend that has to do with stargates. Somewhere along the line, we got in trouble. And right now, we are functioning with the animals, with the plants, in a way that's completely not organic for our consciousness. There is a pain that every one of us carries. It is a soul pain, a very deep soul pain, that knows something vital has been robbed from us. Some of us turn that pain into anger. Some people are born angry. They carry that feeling, that knowing, that they have been somehow victimized. Now, there is a victimization taking place here, but there is a point of consciousness that happens to exist in the higher dimensional fields where you start to understand the victim-victimizer game, and you don't get trapped in it anymore. But when you have your consciousness shut off at D3 and somebody tells you, well, victim-victimizer is just a game, you don't have to play it, it doesn't seem quite real. Nice concept, but it doesn't change the fact that I feel awful, and great, okay, the New Age movement, you're manifesting.